Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, maybe depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to At the Buzzer. Let's do a quick audio check, see how we sound. If we look good, sound good. How you doing, Coach Paul?
It's Friday.
It is
But
Friday.
I'm doing glad the week is over. I'll put it that way. How about yourself?
Same here, same here. Love what we do, but it's also nice to, get some time away from the charts as well. So happy Friday. Very happy Friday.
Uh, Yeah, timeouts are needed, or halftime, or end of the
Abs-
game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we got a confirmation audio video is good. Welcome everyone. I got dogs barking in the background. They just seem to know the time we're going to start. Sorry about that. But welcome to At the Buzzer, our market recap. If this is your first time here, I'm Coach Jay. That is Coach Paul. The goal of this segment is to review what happened in the markets for the day. We may talk about some markets that you have not traded before, but our goal as traders is to identify opportunity, see how we could have taken advantage of those opportunities while managing our risk. Uh, if this is our first time meeting, I am Coach Jay. I've been a Topstep Performance Coach for a little over a year now. I've been trading uh, different markets for over 11 years. Started off with stocks and options, moved over to futures about 5 years ago. Mostly a Nasdaq ES trader, but again, I will trade anything that moves. Um, and I will let you let you go from there, Coach.
Yeah, the Coach Paul. I've been a trader for over 25 years. Been in the futures business for 4 decades. I've traded just about everything, um, including rice. I also coach basketball, like Coach Jay, and I really enjoy working here at Topstep to help traders gain some wisdom and get in the game and pass some combines and get paid.
Absolutely. So the way we're going to start every segment is looking at our top percentage movers on the day. We want to focus on the main four markets: NASDAQ, ES, crude oil, gold. But there's opportunity in other places, right? Today, on the downside, not too much to the downside. If we're looking at this quote board, we only have four things on the downside. We have nat gas down 3.6%, corn futures down 0.57%, and wheat down 9.98% for our biggest percentage mover to the downside. On the upside, we have soybean oil up 3.67%, micro Bitcoin futures, which was on Coach Paul's scouting report. So we are going to get into that a little bit later. Micro Bitcoin up 5.73%, and Ethereum futures up 5.94% for our biggest percentage mover to the upside. In the NASDAQ, we had a positive 1%, 1.09% move, ES 1.05%. Gold, we're up 1.2%, and where's crude on the list? Where are you, crude oil? It's hiding from me. Oh, there we go. Crude up 2.62% for out of the big four. Crude was the biggest mover today, coming off the bottom of that barrel. Uh,
And and boy, that Nasdaq and S&P on a moves. While there was a big move, it sure wasn't easy.
yeah, absolutely not. And we will talk about that. Let's get into it. And I got a question from OPVOG. Can we look at platinum later? If we have some time, we can throw platinum in there as well. Let's talk about the Nasdaq. And you said, it wasn't such an easy move, Coach. Why do you say that? Right? What about the Nasdaq today wasn't easy?
Well, well, it started out strong,
Hmm.
um, and had that, as we can see in that chart, in just about a half an hour or an hour, it moved to new lows, just whipsawed back and forth. It's a day that, if you're just looking at the chart, or you heard the news, it was up, and you didn't day trade it, it'd be like, wow, your I, perception is, wow, it really was up. But if you're trading it, a day like today can get you in trouble where
Yeah,
you can get spun around.
yeah, absolutely.
And so, lesson learned is when just looking at a settlement, without looking intraday, it's the difference between an investor and a trader.
Interesting. Yep, traders, we have to get well, we don't even have to really get direction right, but we got to get location right for sure. On a day like today, most of the straightforward move happened overnight, right? If we're looking at the Globex Open, which is 5 p.m. Central Time, we had an uptrend into the New York Session Open, and a lot of the volatility came because we know that the market was waiting for Powell. We have Jackson Hole Symposium going on this week, and we know that Powell was set to speak at 9 a.m. Central Time today. Didn't hear much of a change from what we already expected. We kind of heard some of the other Fed speakers. I think the Fed is in a blackout period right now as well, so we're not going to hear anything as far as rate decisions go. But what he says kind of in line with what everyone else was saying as well, that the Fed is starting the process of cutting rates, easing policy. So we have 100% probability of a rate cut in September. Of course, anything can change between now and then, but right now it's looking like 100%
Coach,
cut.
what was that percentage?
100% chance, but maybe we should say 99.9%, because anything can and will happen.
Boy, seems like a sure thing. I should just buy 2 years.
Right. I'll pull up the FedWatch tool real quick. And right now we are seeing a 65.5% chance of a 25 basis point cut and a 34.5% chance of a 50-point basis cut. But add those two up and it is 100%. But of course, these numbers change all the time. I think yesterday we looked at this and it was 75%. So it's gonna fluctuate, but pretty certain that we are getting a rate cut based on some of that information. We did also at that same time, 9 a.m. Central, while Powell was talking, have a new home sales number come out. What was forecast was 623,000. The actual was 739,000. Again, just adding to the volatility that we saw in the NASDAQ. I have a 30-minute chart up here, Coach. I'm going to pull up the moving averages, the 20, 50, and the 200. And if we can see it on the chart, they're braided.
Well, there it was, and buy the rumor, sell the fact. This happened. We new highs after Powell speech, I believe.
Yep.
And one of the things I like doing, Coach, is moving that chart before and go step by step into the news and see as it evolves what happens. If you're when you're reviewing or looking at a new system, or you're looking to back test, do this. Start at the beginning of the day and move out slowly, because here we go. Last night we had that good rally. Rallied all night. News came before the news came out. What did we do? We broke and a vicious rally.
Yep.
In what, an hour, and it looked like it was going to the moon.
It absolutely did. Yeah, it looked like we were gonna test that 20K again. While Powell was speaking, but of course, you never know.
And without risk management or accepting a loss, this is what can happen.
Yep.
As we've said it before, anything can happen and will. So today, that's why I said it was a kind of a tough day. I mean, you could be a buyer and lost a lot of money today.
100%. Yeah, I think so. I was on Fast Markets this morning with Dakota. We actually got some house account trades in, and ended up making some money buying this market today. But exactly what you just said, you could have been a buyer and lost. A lot of the sentiment, going into this was, what, we're gonna wait until Powell speaks. Sometimes we're seeing traders in the chat say, hey, why aren't you guys taking trades? And there is opportunity in this, but as much as there's an opportunity to make money in this volatility, there's an opportunity to lose. And what we try to do is manage risk first and then think about, hey, where can we position to get into some trades? Ultimately, we ended up taking some trades in the ES. They played out really well, but we had to wait, right? There was no reason, I think personally, to kind of jump into this price action. I'm looking at 3-minute candles, Coach. This is a 3-minute candle, 60 points to the downside. And then immediately after, another 3-minute candle, 80 points to the upside. Where do you manage your risk in that? Where do you? It's like
I
playing Frogger.
it's split there. And yeah, and you can play, and this is a 3-minute chart,
Yep,
right? There's no room for error here. And knowing your risk, you can play that, but know your risk and make sure it's a risk you can afford.
right,
If it's not, go to micros if you have to get into it. But if you're trying to preserve an account, and especially if you're just starting, this is turbulence,
for sure.
right? No one wants to be a pilot on a plane that's going through turbulence. That- I
I
knew a
don't.
pilot once. He goes, "It's 90%, just easy, and 10% of the time is near death experience." So
I could imagine,
that turbulence comes in, and you're not prepared, especially if you're new to trading.
for sure.
Um,
So what we did see here, just from a technical perspective, just volume real quick. We made this push up, and I want to go back to yesterday. So yesterday we had these volume spikes down. We know we had somewhat of a downtrend day yesterday, and I want to point out this candle here, which was one of our highest volume candles outside of the market open. I think it was the second highest volume candle of the day. So if we frame that out, I actually saw this a little bit later in the day, but the low of this candle, and again, the candle happened 9:06 Central Time yesterday. It's a 3-minute candle. If we look at where the low of this is, right, we frame that out. That was the high of the day today. So whoever was that
nice.
seller there came back into the market. While we were trading this during fast markets, the market's pushing up to 19,900, which we know is a major psychological level, right? Anything that ends in double zeros or triple zeros or whatever, the market's going to trade around there. And you want to watch that reaction. When we got up there, there was 140 lots on the ask at 19,900 even. We traded it out, but look at the volume as we traded that price. If we're going to look for that follow through, and see the market kind of push up, we don't want to see volume decreasing as we're hitting some of these major levels. A lot of that buying got absorbed, I'm assuming, by whoever was the seller initially in this position. We push up, check back up to their prices, the low of that range that they sold, and sold it off again. So really nice opportunity to take a short. We were actually still leaning towards the long side here. So I think Dakota and I both took buys, but if I'm doing a trade review, that putting those puzzle pieces together, it's, hey, we're coming up to a major level. We had selling here yesterday. That market participant is still there. That gave us one of the best shorts on the day, where we had a 24-minute move pretty much straight to the downside, and it was about 300
The
points
300 points. There you go.
in 24
Six
minutes.
thousand dollars on a one lot mini.
Right, right. Yeah.
Um,
So very sharp move. And then after that, we
it-
kind of sold off back down towards the lows. If we put up the top step daily levels up here, we traded down near settlement, near yesterday's close, bounced off of there. And if we zoom out, this looks just like a higher time frame range bound day.
it's interesting you say that, Coach. In the S&P, I had the pivot level of 14, and once it traded below it, but never
Mhm.
closed below it on the half hour. It literally wicked, but that was not. I mean, like you said, that happened in 24. Was it 24 minutes?
24 minutes.
So that's vicious, right?
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's so.
If you don't have a stop in, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah, and you're gonna panic and really it was classic stop run. There was panic in the streets for about 10 minutes,
Right.
and then right back up to the 200 moving average on the half hour.
Yeah.
Coach, I had a question for you. If you
Yeah.
if you had that resistance from yesterday's
hmm
seller,
hmm
where would you buy that if you didn't want to if you wanted to buy it but you didn't want to buy it up there?
It's a great question. Uh, that is a great question. So I think initially what we were looking at was VWAP. right? We had some nice opportunities to buy VWAP prior to the news, right? Where we see these VWAP holding here right into the New York session open, and we bounce off of it.
Hmm.
Uh, it depends on what type of day we identify that it is, right? If we identify that this is going to be a a trending day, then I want to buy VWAP, right? Because on a trend day, VWAP's likely to hold. But because this was a range bound day, I don't want my entries to be near VWAP, right? I would, if I'm going to buy it, I need to be below VWAP for a reversion back to it. We ultimately were buying above VWAP when I realize it now. But if I was trading at my best, my entries would have been near these lows because we did have a range bound day, right? We can see the angle of this VWAP start to flatten out a little bit. And what that's telling us is it's a range bound day, right? VWAP angles are pretty important. If the angle is kind of up and to the right, down and to the right, we're in a trend. But if it's flat, the market's flat and it's range bound, those buys should have come a lot lower near some of these support levels, maybe settlement. We had yesterday's value area low down here in the NASDAQ at 19, what was that, 19,647. So the buys should have come around there.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a very big level again early next week.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Boy, right
absolutely.
to the tick.
To the
Nice.
tick. To the tick.
Here's another thing, Coach. We talked about, in buying that up there is where are we?
You're so
What
far away
two or
from
two from the volume?
right.
I've that's a good point.
So what coach is
Even if
talking
you
about
bought it
here,
at VWAP,
what coach is
you
talking
could
about here,
still
sorry,
limit your loss. Go ahead.
you're saying you're far away from volume. I just want to make sure people
Yeah,
understand exactly what we're saying when
yeah,
we say that.
please.
We have this VWAP here. And if we're in a trend, we want to get our trade entries as close to VWAP as possible. If I'm buying up here at these highs looking for a breakout, VWAP ATR at the time was 40 points. That means every 3 minute candle is at least 40 points in range or around 40 points in range. We were about 3.5 ATRs away from that VWAP. So that's pretty far from volume, right? Volume's all the way down here. We're buying up here with the hope that the market's going to push higher, but there's no volume to do it, right? And we can see the market's reaction. It comes back down.
And to further that, remember what drove up this price, right, was buyers.
Mhm.
And we went through a little bit of this yesterday um, on power players. Is that as we got up away from volume, what else did we do? We stalled, right? We went sideways for what, about a half an hour.
Right.
Now, what does that mean? These buyers have what? They've stopped, and now it's inertia.
Yeah.
It's losing its inertia, and whatever. I would say there's an algo that looks for that because that just came in. It was like there was no one what, I know that there was nothing, no buying, no size underneath until we went to the classic J bottom. I did see that, and I got back in because I got stopped out.
So this candle here, and we've talked about this a few times on this as well. High volume at the lows of this move. This selling gets absorbed the same way the buying gets absorbed up here. This selling is getting absorbed at these lows where they sold a ton of volume. They could not push it lower. And once we get a close outside of that, right, the very next candle closes outside. That gives us an opportunity to limit your risk for a trade back in the opposite direction. And I'm going to switch over to the ES because we did take a house account trade in the ES. And it was pretty much that trade in the ES. Give me 1 second. Whoa, what's going on here? There we go. Switch over to the ES real quick. We did take a buy in the ES, sort of late, 56.40 we got in. So we were kind of late to this move. I will put the blue line on the chart for where we got in on that trade, and we can see it. We were still late here. I think we were trying to find a place to get in. Still close to VWAP with this entry, Ideally, in a range bound market, you want to buy below VWAP for the, the market to trade from one end of the range to the other. But I liked that trade location. And again, it came after this high volume candle that you're talking about, Coach. If we frame that
Yeah.
one out, we get closes above. And
Wow. Again, it was, it was almost like that's why earlier it was very hard. It got back on over VWAP, and that starting from that point, it looks like it's going to go right back to new highs.
yeah, yes, it does. Yeah, but it just never did, right? There was never really any traction in either direction, right? For sellers or for buyers, this
Yeah.
was very much a see profit, take profit day across a lot of the markets, right? Even in gold, and we'll get to gold in a minute. But on days like today, you want to try to identify the market personality for the day, right? Is it a trend day? Is it a range bound day? And how does that dictate my trades? So we took this entry here, 5640, and we're looking for the push above, the major psych level 5650. But this is this 5650 trade right here. And coach, as soon as we get to these major levels, again, volume dies. There's no one buying it. And if we were to hold on to the trade to say, you know what, we need to see new highs of the day, that trade ends up being a loss. So, assessing how we're doing, and great job to the team, Dakota, Hogue, Andre, myself, whoever was in the chat as well, kind of giving us levels. Great execution, right? On a day like today, we were down at one point. We tried to buy it. We were down about $600. Ended up positive $600, where we made about 1,200 on this trade. On a day like today, I think we did a great job. So shout out to the team.
Yeah, you did great teamwork. It's that was because that just getting not killed today.
Yeah, right, right. Surviving a day like this, for me, and maybe even thriving on a day like this, if you're Dolby and you can identify the extremes of the range, maybe you go to a higher time frame where we're looking at a 15-minute chart to see the extremes. But these are violent ranges, right? They're not gradual ranges where they're trading from one end to the other. They're violent ranges, right? A lot of overlap in short time frames where either scaling down or being extremely patient, I think, is the key for days like this. Coach Hoop says scratch is a winner today. I would agree with that for sure.
I love that saying. It truly is.
All right, Coach, anything else you want to say on the equities before we move on? Pretty range bound day if we're looking at the moving averages. They're kind of wrapped around each other. We did close above the 200 moving average on the 30-minute in the ES. So right now this market is still technically in an uptrend, but in balance, right? Trying to figure out what's going on. We'll check what's on the calendar for news as far as next week goes. But again, we're not far from all-time highs. We are less than 2%, less than 1.5% away from all-time highs in the ES. Very well could be next week that we're seeing that move. The market is just in balance right now.
Coach, can we look at the weekly?
Yes, sir.
It's Friday.
It is Friday. So the weekly looks a little off on this chart. So I'm going to pull up the daily instead, and we'll look at it that way.
Boy, nice V.
Yeah.
So we can look at this week. We've really gone sideways, waiting for the big event,
Which was kind of a non-event.
Which is he's when I see Fed events and the Fed speakers, they're talking a lot and they're not saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
Greenspan was the king of that.
Oh yeah.
And I kind of understand that. It's like, what you're going in front of the press. What are you going to say? I really think we should cut it by a half. But
Yeah.
I mean,
if the fate of the market hung on my words, I would be very careful with my words.
right? And they have speechwriters, so
Right. Yeah, I'm not just gonna go out and just go off the cuff, not reading the speech, because you know what the implications of that are, right? If you say something that the market interprets as good or bad news, there is uh, going to be an effect. So they got to be very careful.
Wow. So looking into next week, we could hit those new highs. Or what? Anything could happen. We could go back down to the 20-day moving average.
Yep.
Um, and with it, we're at the end of August here. Starting in September, we talk about, the October is known as this gloomy month
Hmm.
for stocks, probably because of the great crash of 29. But those moves start in September. They culminate in October and November. So coming into the end of this month, be prepared. Get rested.
Yeah.
Um, it's Friday. This weekend, do something you enjoy. Rest up because I believe September and October and November, it's going to be a wild ride.
Which we want.
And right, Coach Jay and I were talking about this yesterday. One of the things is being physically prepared, getting rest, exercise, you know, being on top of your game.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Just yeah, mentally in tune where if we're expecting to see, good market action, you want to be in a position where you're uh, capitalizing on it, right? You don't want to be tired, be hungover, anything like that when the market's moving, because those are the opportunities that we're waiting for. We did get a comment from Courtney here that said, it was a non-event for the ES and the Nasdaq, big deal for the Russell. Just a quick look at the Russell real quick. Doesn't get a lot of love, but the Russell up 3.14% today. Um, whatever's in the Russell liked what they heard from Powell, and a really nice uptrend day uh, in one of the equities that probably not many traders trade, but a place of opportunity for sure. Just looking at this real quick, we have the 3-minute opening range here. We left the range and just never looked back, right? If I anchor view up to there, it was a support the entire time and just a really nice trend day up. So that's one thing we haven't talked about here on YouTube, Coach. When the NASDAQ and the ES are range bound, we've seen the Dow and the Russell be trending. Um, Different components. So if you're a trend trader, maybe if you're trading the ES and the NASDAQ, looking at those markets when we're consolidated, you might get a trade that fits your playbook.
Yeah, I haven't seen I haven't seen the Russell in a while. Like, interesting. Can we look at the daily chart?
Yep, there we go.
Boy, it doesn't slope well like the S&P. That's like a jagged edge.
Yeah, it looks like it's kind of playing catch up to where, we had this sharp down move July into the beginning of August in the ES and the NASDAQ, and we've seen it kind of retrace that move. The Russell looks like it's not done retracing that move yet, right? Still has a little bit more room up towards where that sell-off started. Right. Anything else on the equities before we move on, Coach?
I'm good with the equities.
Awesome. Where do we want to go? Crude or gold? You pick.
Go with the barbaric metal.
Let's go with gold. Did take a trade in gold today as well. Here we have gold on the daily. We know gold has been in this uptrend on a higher time frame. The 20 moving average, this is a daily chart, 20 above the 50, above the 200. In an uptrend, we've been making all-time highs and kind of pulling off a little bit from it. Switch it over to a 30. What are you seeing here, Coach?
Above the 200, holding it after a sharp correction. And we talked about a classic head and shoulders
Mm-hmm.
break that failed.
Yep.
Um, Boy, did most of that move happen overnight? Yep, but yeah,
Uh,
look, it did.
yes. Yeah, it did. It did. Let's take the moving averages off for a second. and we will find that Globex Open. 5 p.m. Central Time is the Globex Open. Let's look at where we are with that. Right around here. Here's that candle, and that set the low for the day. Coach, I know you love to do this. Frame out that first 30 minutes, attach a VWAP to it, and where do we buy it?
Coach, I love the micro gold contract.
Yeah.
Um, I have the daily ATR at $42.
Okay.
That's $4,200
With the one
in
lot.
the regular gold. And it's making these great ranges where if you do 2 or 3 micros, you can manage your risk a lot more and be comfortable in getting a runner because it's giving a lot of runners.
Right.
And you can't be wrong. If you have a $50,000 combine, you could be wrong in half an hour and done. But
Yeah.
that micro gives you bang for your buck.
Absolutely.
Wow,
Absolutely.
that
Speaking of what you just said, Coach, talking about risk management a little bit, maybe trading micros instead of the minis. Don't know if everyone heard the announcement, but the DLL is going to be removed on TopStep X starting next week, right? So there was some ask to remove the DLL. TopStep listens, as it always does, to his community, and we're removing that daily loss limit, um, giving traders a little bit more control over their accounts. Again, this is only going to be on TopStep X accounts for now, so you have more control, more flexibility for your trades. With that being said, what do we say? We want to take advantage of opportunities while managing our risk. Try to find a way to manage your risk with that DLL not there. I think we have some smart traders in here who understand why a DLL is important, but now you have the control to set it to what you want it to be, right? In TopStep X, if you go into the settings tab here, you can go into risk settings, and you have where you can set your risk per trade. You can also set your risk for the day. You can set personal profit targets or loss limits. You're going to want to set that. And again, this is only going to be for new accounts that are purchased after 5 p.m. Central on Sunday. But there will be no DLL set by Topstep. You're going to have to go ahead and set that on your own, how you see fit. And I would suggest everyone to do it. Coach, if you're on a 50K combine, you have right now you have a max loss limit of $1,500. Is that right?
is that what it is?
I
50?
think
No,
it's
it'll be
max loss limit of $2,000 on a 50K account. Where would you set a personal daily loss limit?
$250.
There you go. There you go.
Um,
Personal.
it's Go ahead, coach.
No, no, no. Go ahead.
Because I got to preach. I
Nope.
don't. We just talk about a lot of talk. You lose your mind, you go on tilt, um, and it happens.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm don't I'm I'm not convinced of a good way to notify someone that they're in the middle of tilt,
Yep.
because if they weren't in tilt, they'd go, yeah, okay. It would be
Right.
There would be some reasonableness.
Right.
Um, so while you can do that, what is the number one prerogative in trading?
You have to have money to trade. Got to manage your risk.
There's someone coming in and say, "Yeah, you like that trade? I got that for you." No, you have to have some skin in the game. The danger, and I've seen it. I'd love to see the stats before and after percentage of people,
Hmm.
um, because your biggest enemy when you're in tilt is yourself.
Right.
And while you can go ahead and do that, I highly advise not to do that. I set it for me and to my total account. If I'm ever down, 12.5% is the number. One
There you
eighth
go.
of my account. I'm done. Because obviously something is wrong. When you go through your results and you could and I've and you go back to see your biggest losing days,
Right.
and you can remove half of the amount of those losing days, because those are days, especially traders, that you're not following the rules. You're just trading emotionally,
Yeah.
and you'd be like, "Wow, I could really use that $4,000 right now."
They add up. They add up for
They
sure. Th- They definitely add up. I see some traders saying, that's it's not helpful to remove the DLL. That's an opinion, but I think it is actually very helpful where it's putting a lot more of the control in your hands. And are there going to be traders that say, I don't need it and I'm just going to trade? There are, but you're accepting more risk than you may need to take. But I really like this because, Coach, we've talked to traders about it as well, where we're saying, hey, you know what, TopStep has a daily loss limit, but use that as the guardrail and set your own loss limit somewhere way below that where you're still in control of your trading, where you can say, hey, you know what, I need to step away. I am not seeing things well, where sometimes it's just a crutch. It was like, oh, I hit the DLL, so I'll just go do something else. It's putting a lot more control, a lot more responsibility on your own trading. So if you're building up an account, right, whether it be a TopStep XFA live account, your own personal account, you're more responsible for what happens in those accounts. So um, it's important. And Freddie's saying, Coach, you know how hard it is to walk away on tilt. DLL is like a stop loss. So we're not saying that there is no DLL. You can still set one personally, right? So if you like where that, if you're trading a 50K account and you like the $1,000 DLL, set your DLL to liquidate and block you at $1,000 and nothing changes for you, right? If $1,000 is
Yeah.
too much for you, right? Because like Coach is saying, if my average winning days are $200, but my average losing days are $400, I'm not profitable. So if I know my average is 200, then I need to set my personal DLL to $100 because that's what makes sense for me. And that's where it gives the trader more control. Because if you just leave it open to $1,000, traders are just ultimately going to say, you know what? Well, I have this room to play in. You're not trading well. If your average winning days are $200 and your average losing days are 500, 600, 800, or $1,000, you're not seeing things well. By the time you get to that point, figure out where you should cut yourself off, and you'll be a lot better for it.
um, that's I can't say anymore. And is, set your limit
Set it
and
for
make it
yourself.
reasonable.
Yep.
Um, I do. And I'm not bragging. I'm just like, because you know why? My experience has shown me when I'm in that mode,
Nothing's getting you out of it.
it's a mania. You're
Yeah.
manic,
Hmm.
literally manic. You're just trying to get back money that you first, most likely you shouldn't have lost that much in the first place.
Right.
Um, because what are we at the end of the day? We're risk managers.
Hmm.
So practice safety.
Yep.
I,
That's it. That's it.
I can't say anything more
There's
than
nothing
that.
else to say after
Be
that.
safe.
And
I feel
and
like I'm
we're
sending my teenage son out. Be safe.
we're going to we're going to get back to the markets, but real quick, I also saw a comment saying, if you're only risking $250 a day, what contract size are you trading? We just heard Coach Paul talk about micros, and that's why, where he's managing the account. Does that mean that you're going to build the account slower? Yes, but slower might be safer sometimes. Um, where sometimes we're trying to get to that goal so fast of passing a combine, get into an XFA, get into a payout, where the trading that you're doing isn't the most sustainable type of trading. Can you do it? Yes, but is it a high probability that you're going to get there safely? It isn't. Take all of this into consideration. There's no rush in any of these accounts. The goal is to try to build these accounts over time, and not try to rush it. So if that's how you're reading that, just think about an adjustment that might need to be made if $250 is too small of a DLL. Trading a contract size and a quantity that fits that number.
Coach, I'll put it this way. It's your training. If you're learning to trade,
Hmm.
right, when you went to get your driver's license, did they just Did your parents just hand you the keys to the car and
We won't talk
say,
about
you
that.
know, have at it,
I failed 3 times. Uh, I failed my
right?
driving test 3 times.
Okay, you don't fail it out. You imagine, okay, I'm gonna, you know, Dad, I wanna learn to drive. Hey, here's the keys. Good luck.
Yeah,
You have to practice. You have to learn the hazards. You have to have some guidance. I mean, that's why I think about insurance companies. If you have a 16-year-old boy at home and you want to insure him on your insurance, you're going to find out just what premium is,
oh
right?
yeah,
There's
yeah,
a reason for that. If you're learning, start slow. Learn how to manage the account. If you're if you're just otherwise, what do we end up doing? We're just hoping and praying.
absolutely, absolutely. All right, let's get back into the markets. We talked about gold. Looking at it on a 30-minute time frame, we had a breakout of the Globex range. VWAP went with it, and pretty much an uptrend the entire day. We know that Powell speaking and home sales is going to affect gold as well. So we did see some of that volatility. And this is where, we were looking to buy this, where we have right at 9 a.m. Central Time, we have the spike, Powell speaking, home sales. We'll make this a fib so we can see where 50% of this is. Uh, this is why I like the buys here. You guys know for me, I'm going to frame out high volume candles and I'll look if it presents opportunities to me. 50% of this candle started to hold. Where Dakota and I both bought it was 25.41.6. So we'll put 25.41.6 on the chart with this blue line here. See if we can make it a little bigger. And this is why, right, Coach? We have heavy selling coming into this 50%. I'm looking at this as a demand area. We bounce off of it, and once we bounce, we've talked about this. You can either take the trade above where the selling came in, or if you're seeing a demand area, it's maybe a lower probability where we could have continued to sell off. But once I saw it hold, buying it on the way back up, I thought it was a pretty good trade. And then, from there, it's where do I set profit targets? Can we get out of this range, right? We saw a heavy volume coming in here. I want to know, can we push out of this range potentially? And then second profit target is going to be the highs of the day. I think Dakota was able to hold his trade a little bit longer than I did, but decent trade location, and really we consolidated the rest of the day after that heavy volume came in.
Coach, if you buy it there, well, how do you frame out your risk?
So for me, I was trading micros at the time. My risk was going to be the lows of the candle, right? So uh, the entry area was right around that 25.39. I got around 25.41, and I was risking. Ultimate risk was the lows, right? Lows of the candle, so about 10 points. Trading two
On a
micros.
micro, that's
Go ahead.
$200, right?
Exactly. Exactly. $200 risk. And ultimately, if I held it for the entire trade, right, that's a $300 trade. So 1.5 to 1 risk to reward. Uh, we had the trader saying, how do you trade with a $250 daily loss limit? Take good setups in spots where you can manage your risk. And if my trade location was here, 25.41.6, the ultimate risk on the trade was $200. But if we look at where the trade location was, I could have held this trade all day and never been stopped out. And the maximum drawdown I would have had was $90. So trade well, right? Trade well, where if you're managing $250, you can't just shoot at everything that moves.
Yeah, you don't have much room to lose.
Right.
So there's two things you can do. You trade smaller and give it more room.
Correct. Correct.
For me,
Uh,
I'm more comfortable with that.
absolutely.
Um, that's my personality.
Yep. And then what you said, where was the risk? I was looking at the lows of this candle for it to hold, but I was looking at this area here, 25.36, where we saw kind of this pivot here. If the market got back under this, I think I may have cut the trade.
Okay. but
Um,
well managed. Now, here's once we're in too. This is an important thing. Once we're in, now we're looking forward, and this is for new traders, if you're, or even old traders. We're, sometimes you're buying that you want to see new highs, right? What are
yeah,
your expectations?
right. Yeah. And I think it's important to have them. It's important to have expectations for where we think the market can go. I think we do such an extensive job at framing out risk where we say, hey, if the market gets here, we're wrong. We want to look at the bright side too. We want to be, when we're right, we want to see how much we can potentially be right. And of course, it's your job to manage the position to there, but we measure out risk a lot. But I feel like a lot of times traders aren't measuring out potential areas of profit. Now, just because I put a line on the chart and say, hey, the market should get here, does that mean it's going to get there? No, of course not, right? Anything can happen. But I want to have an idea of where the market has the potential to trade to. And again, for me, it was the high of this candle and then high of day after that. If we were able to see the push, I wasn't patient enough. I took it off. But, you know, it was measured and we got there.
Yeah, that's because that's the we talk about trade management is being able to be comfortable with the risk you've taken and accept it. But what can happen is if you stare at every tick and you what I call is you end up sometimes becoming a cheerleader. Like like, oh, every tape that goes with you is great, and you're booing, and you get caught in a cycle
Yep.
that can that can really where you lose control. So, we said earlier, scratches and win. If you bought that and you put in a stop after it went up towards the highs and say, okay, I either take profit here or I let it run.
Right.
Comfortable with that?
And let the trade work. We pretty much consolidated from there. We will see if gold makes new all-time highs next week. We are currently 22 points off of it, so just under a 1% move for a new all-time high in gold. Still looking at that 2600 level as a potential magnet, being that whole number level, and we're still kind of holding up here. Let's go to crude real quick, and then I want to go to one other market, crude oil.
Well, it was right back at you to the middle of we talked about this yesterday, coach.
So the number that should not be named to the downside in crude is 71.46. Uh, Not as even as a perfect 80, but that's where the market bounced from a few times, right? We have a bounce here just a few days ago, 71.46, and then if we go back a couple of months, we bounce right around there, 71.49. We talked about this yesterday, right? This is a potential low. Just looking at a higher time frame, right? If I go out to a daily, we're seeing this be a higher time frame demand area, and that's exactly what it looked like today. We had a 3.5 point bounce from there for a really nice trade to the upside.
There is the sharply unchanged market of all time.
That's a fact. That is a fact.
I mean, what was it? Just was it yesterday? I lose track. When we were at, I mean, it was going to end, go to zero. We were talking about negative oil,
Yep.
and now we're right back where we started from.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing changed. Yeah, yesterday we were trading down at the lows of that demand. We had a nice bounce, and we just continue that right back to the middle of the range. It's a higher time frame range bound play, which is nice though, right? These are still pretty big ranges to trade, right? A $3 move in crude, 2.5% up day. That's a trend day in a higher time frame range, and just pretty awesome. Let's see where the Globex Open was, and then we'll get into that last market of the day. But same thing with gold. Globex Open, anchor a VWAP. VWAP leaves the range and supportive the entire way up. So really nice. And
The
if you guys
black
want
gold.
black gold,
It's
black gold.
wow.
Andrew says that's probably why Dolby used to trade it in a perma range. Yeah, I don't think Dolby should trade anything else but crude oil on higher time frames. And we could start calling him Dolby the Oil Baron because this thing is just in a range. This setup, something that we've kind of framed out a little bit, Coach. I know you really like this one, but anchoring VWAP to that Globex Open, identifying the range.
Yeah. And then when the next volume comes in, because sometimes Europe is almost more important than the U.S. Open.
Hmm.
In crude, it seems to me, volume starts coming in at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it kind of sets the pace.
Yep.
Um, I've seen that a lot. Um, but I won't be getting up at 2 o'clock Central to trade it unless it really makes a difference.
Right. Right. I mean, yeah, if we're talking about where best trade location was definitely in London, right? Do we know, and this is the London Open here, I'll frame this out. Do we know that the market's going to trend this way? We don't. But in hindsight, best trade location is in London. What I do like is seeing this much of a trend with volume going with us. Let's say you did wake up to, only trade the New York session. Uh, Crude opens up at 8 a.m. Central Time. Here's the crude oil open. We're still very much in that trend, and there's still some room left in this, right?
Wow.
We still some room. Obviously, not as much as you could have gotten, but that's okay, right? Same thing. I anchor a view up to the New York session open for crude, and there's still about $1 left in this move. So really nice trade.
It's interesting, Coach. It's hurricane season.
Hmm.
Um, Katrina had, where would crude open $15 higher on that Monday on that unfortunate event.
Right.
Um, Friday, there was no news of any kind of Category 5 hurricane. It
Hmm.
was my best trade ever, and I don't remember, but remember this seasonally, you you don't want to go home short crude oil during hurricane season over a weekend.
Yeah,
It's just not
makes sense.
not a good idea.
Makes sense. All right, so that covers our four markets. Anything else on crude before we move on to Coach Paul's scouting report? If you guys remember, we asked Coach Paul what was on his scouting report yesterday. He did say micro Bitcoin, which was also our second top percentage mover of the day, 5.71% up. Uh, Good scout, Coach. Good eye, as they would say in
Good,
baseball. Good eye.
good eye.
What'd you see in
Wow.
Bitcoin that you liked, and how did it work out today? How did it play out today?
Well, we had the result. It was up big. Again, that wasn't easy either.
Hmm.
But what I saw, if we start with the daily,
Okay.
okay, we we're above the 200-day moving average, but we were right at the 20-day moving average, which we've been playing with all week.
Hmm.
I wanted to play the long side, so I took the half-hour chart. Um, we looked last night on that first half an hour. Kind of looks like crude and
And gold, yeah.
what is that? Electric gold?
I guess that's what we can call it. Yeah, digital gold.
um, but look what I mean. There was no selling. It was worth the risk, so I did buy it. And a micro Bitcoin, if it moves, it's $1,000 move. I think it's $100.
$100. Yep.
Yeah, it's $100. Take two. They're cheap, but they're not because at one time I was down at $200 on this account on
Mm.
2 micro Bitcoin. So while we can immediately people kind of like, oh, it's for little kids.
if you were short this, you would not be saying that.
right? It adds up.
Absolutely.
It's because it's risk is relative, right?
Correct. 100%.
And so I saw that 20 moving average where we look at that gap from, I think that was Monday, wasn't it? It was a huge gap. We
So
touched it, filled it, but didn't go back down to new lows. Now we playing around with the 20-day moving average on the daily, and I was like, if it's going to hold, it's going. This is today was going to be the day. I didn't think it'd be this dramatic. Yeah,
sometimes
you know what?
when you're good, you're lucky, right? Just make contact.
Yeah, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Right.
I was set. The risk was set.
It's a great
Yeah,
trade.
cheap trade. And I think it has a really good chance of running.
So if you had to say it, would you leave that on your scouting report for now?
I would leave that on my scouting report for now.
Awesome.
Um,
Awesome. Great call, coach. And sometimes when you see something, and the reason I ask that, when you see something, you might not have to move it, right? Where, hey, if this market's presenting opportunity for me, why go look for another one? There's opportunity here. There's money to be made here. The markets are moving, and that's why we're going to do this scouting report segment where, hey, there's potential here. Maybe go look at it. Trade it in a practice account, traders, if you haven't traded this market before, if you want to get used to it. But if you have technical setups, I think they can apply to any market. And micro Bitcoin is one that's just providing great opportunities to trade right now. So shout out to you, coach, for that scout. Love that it worked out literally the day after. 5% move to the upside. Can't call it any better than that. Um,
I'll take it.
we got a
Right?
we got a question from Zysoft. Hopefully, Zysoft. I think I said your name right. How many trades is too many? You want to answer that one?
Now, that's another relative question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for two things, we had what was his? I forget his name. Guy who made $3,000 traded 1,500 contracts, micros.
$14,000, 3,000
Wait,
contracts. How many trades is too many?
um, here you can do that in one day, but even at 14,000, your fees, you have to be right. He was right.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's part of this process. Congratulations for doing it.
Yeah.
Can you do that consistently? And there was some discussion, which I've said this a long time. Coach, we've had this discussion. It was a discussion on Topstep TV. It was,
Mm-hmm.
it's funny. The less I trade,
The more you make.
the more I make.
100%.
So my advice is focus on making measured risk trades and begin from there and start on your practice account.
Yep. And my quick aside on that is how many good decisions can you make in a day? And when you review your trades, when we go back and look at it, right, we're talking about this, we're doing this market review for a reason. In the markets that we saw, how many A plus, if we'll call it that, setups were there? Maybe 3 or 4, maybe 2 or 3 really in the equities. So if that's what the market's presenting, then to me that should dictate your trades, right? So, and if there's none, then there's no trade to take, right? A lot of, sometimes we're seeing, 50 executions, 60 executions, 100 executions. Are there 100 good setups in a day or 100 good opportunities for us to make money? That's the way I would look at that. So it depends on your trading. If you're a scalper, maybe there's more, but it is all relative for sure. We are
Well,
go ahead, coach.
Coach, I'll give you one example. Just before this, at the end of Top Step TV,
Hmm.
there was the reversal challenge.
Absolutely.
How well do people do that? And they trade a lot.
Yeah, not very. Because you're having to make a
So,
decision every 30 seconds, it feels like. Or you just put something on and if it's going in your direction, then you don't want to move anything. But I've done that reversal challenge and there's just in the back of your mind, you're feeling like, hey, I should be making a decision. And we're very conscious about making the right or wrong decision there. We are at the hour. This has been a great week. Coach, it's been great to have you back this week.
good to be back.
Thank you for joining. Thanks everyone for joining us, hanging out this week. Go ahead and hit that thumbs up button if you like what you heard today. or throughout the week. Coach Paul and I are going to continue to do this. We'll continue to get better at it. Hopefully, our analysis is helping you in your trading as well, because ultimately that is the goal. So let us know. Let us know if you like what you hear in the chat, in the Top Step Discord, and we'll continue improving this. But that has been another session of At the Buzzer. Coach, you got anything before we go?
Yeah, you just said improvement. TopStep X keeps improving. There will be stumbles along the way, much like as a trader, keep focusing on improvement. You'll have stumbles along the way, but the goal is within sight. And that's all I have to say.
Awesome. Remember, we do Topstep TV 6 days a week, and on Sunday we will be open again. Nick Fortick is going to kick us off for the week at 4:40 Central, 4:45 Central Time on Sunday. We have Coach Dakota coming up after him with Slow Markets. He's going to be doing that for an hour, starting at 7:30 Central Time. And then Deanna on Monday. She goes Monday through Thursdays, 3:30 a.m. Central Time. Then we have the daytime show, and Coach Paul and I here to wrap it up at 3:15 Central Time. Thank you, everyone. Again, go do something fun this weekend. Go spend some time with some family. Get outside. Enjoy the nice weather. Summer's coming to an end. Don't mean to give anybody any anxiety over it, but let's go experience as much of it as we can before the winter is here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you all next week. Bye.
Great job, Jay. Bye.